Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Five. I'm Pastor Steve, and my goal today is to help you get your day off to a great start. And so, if you've been with us before, you know that the way we do this is that every day we read one chapter from the Bible together. And so, in so doing, we are working our way, chapter by chapter, book by book, through the Bible. Now, we went through the whole New Testament actually a couple of times over the last couple of years, and then we jumped into the Old Testament for a little while, and now we're back in the New Testament right at the very beginning in the book of Matthew. And so we've been working our way through, and today we come to Matthew chapter 17. And so my invitation to you would be that when we're all done the lesson, you would take a few moments and read the whole of Matthew chapter 17. It's a great chapter, and you're going to want to read the whole of it. But for the purpose of our lesson, we're going to look at just a portion of it. We'll be looking at verses 24 through 26. And so if you would, grab a Bible or pull it up on your phone. Join me in Matthew chapter 17, beginning in verse 24. After Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma temple tax came to Peter and asked, "Does your teacher pay the temple tax?" "Yes, he does," he replied. Then Peter came into the house, and Jesus was the first to speak. "What do you think, Simon?" he asked. "From whom do the kings of the earth collect duties and taxes? From their own children or from others?" "From others," Peter answered. "Then the children are exempt," Jesus said to him. "But so that we may not cause offense, go to the lake, throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and for yours." Interesting story at so many levels. Now, just to set a little bit of a context, literally since the days of Moses, every Jewish male over the age of 20 was required to pay a half shekel temple tax, or a half shekel now in Jesus' day was the equivalent of 2 Roman drachma. And so every male would pay this temple tax once a year. This isn't a Roman tax. This is a Jewish tax. This is a tax that they give towards the work of the temples, like a tithe, right? Or a building campaign we might have, or whatever. And so the money was used to help keep the temple up, right? To keep it maintained and to cover the costs of worship and all that sort of thing. And every male, every Jewish male over the age of 20 paid this temple tax, right? Now, of course, the temple is God's house. The tax collector approaches Peter, perhaps afraid to talk directly to Jesus, and asks him, "Well, doesn't your master pay the temple tax?" And Peter, I think, probably caught a little bit unaware, not sure what to say. So, "Well, yeah, of course he does, of course." Right? But then when he goes back and is in Jesus' presence, Jesus asks him a question, right? He says, "Do the kings of this earth tax their own children? Or do they tax others?" And Peter replies, of course, well, others. The family of the king doesn't pay taxes into the king, right? That's from everyone else. So what is Jesus' point? The temple is his Father's house. And so he should not be taxed. Right? That's the point that he's making. He should not pay the tax. It is his Father's house. But Jesus doesn't end the conversation there. Right? Jesus doesn't want to offend the tax collector. He doesn't want to send a message that he doesn't care about the temple, doesn't want to help with its upkeep. So he tells Peter to go ahead and pay the tax anyways. Spiritually speaking, Jesus had every right not to pay the tax. And it wasn't an insignificant amount. A drachma was worth about a day's wages. So this is 2 days' pay. So I mean, you think about it in today's context, it's a little bit of money, right? It's not millions of dollars, but it's something, right? It's something of some significance. But Jesus had no desire to create a controversy where it wasn't necessary. So instead he performs a miracle, sends Peter down to the pond, fishes in a lake, right? Fishes, pulls out a fish, finds a coin in his mouth that will pay the tax for both of them, right? So Jesus has all the resources in the world. It was not a problem for him. It was really just a matter of whether he should stand in this situation and make an issue of it. So it wasn't a requirement for Jesus to pay the tax, but he chooses to do it. Now, you probably know that Jesus wasn't afraid of controversy, right? When necessary, when appropriate, Jesus often took unpopular stands. He regularly called out the religious leaders of their day for their hypocrisy or their mistakes. He offended people quite often, actually, and seemed okay doing it. But he also knew when it was worth making an issue of something and when it wasn't. And I think there's an important lesson there for all of us. There are things in this life that are worth standing for, offending over, even dying for. And there are things that aren't. And a part of our task as Christ followers is to understand the difference, to be spiritually discerning enough to know when to stand and when to stand down, having the courage to stand up when we should, and the humility to sit down when appropriate, and the wisdom to know the difference. Would you join me in prayer? Lord, I thank you for this story that reminds us that while there are ample opportunities to offend, to take a stand, to be controversial, help us to know that there are times when that is exactly what we should do. We should stand, we should risk, we should be willing to offend people if it's the right thing. But help us to see in Jesus' example that not every battle needs to be fought. Not every situation requires that kind of response. And sometimes we just have to be humble enough to step down because it's not worth the division. And so help us, Lord, to have the wisdom to know when to stand and when to pause. I pray all this in Jesus' holy name. Amen. All right, everyone, have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you on Monday. God bless.